It all started with the sound of a champagne cork. Not in my house, not with me. It was tinny, coming through my phone speaker. I was sitting in my home office, the one where I'd built my entire business from a single laptop and a ridiculous amount of coffee. The screen showed a live video, a story posted just moments before. On it, my husband's family, the Prestons, were all gathered on the deck of a yacht. My yacht. They were laughing, glasses raised, the sun glinting off the water. Behind them. And then Valora, my sister-in-law, the self-appointed queen of the Preston dynasty, stepped forward. She tapped her glass with a perfectly manicured nail. "A toast," she said, her voice smooth as silk, but with an edge I knew all too well. "To the Preston family legacy. May it sail on forever." Everyone cheered. My husband, Lyle, was right. There beside her, smiling that easy, charming smile that I've fallen for. The one that I was now starting to see was just a mask for his spinelessness. They were all there, his cousins, his aunt, his parents. The whole clan, on my yacht, without me. And it was the use of that word legacy that sent a cold spike of dread through my gut. Because I was beginning to realize that in the Preston family storybook, I wasn't just a side character. I was a footnote they were actively trying to erase. That little video wasn't the beginning. Of course, it was just the final glaring confirmation of something I'd been feeling for years. A quiet, creeping exclusion that I had always tried to explain away. I'd tell myself I was being too sensitive. I'd tell myself that old money families are just different, that their bonds are forged in a way I, a girl from a middle-class background who had worked for every single thing she owned, just couldn't understand. I made excuses for them. More importantly, I made excuses for Lyle, who would always say things like, "That's just how Valora is," or "Don't let them get to you." But seeing them all there, on the deck of the Wanderer, the boat I had bought with my own money, a boat that meant more to me than they could ever imagine. That was different. This wasn't a forgotten invitation. This was a statement. I minimized the video, my hand trembling slightly. My heart was pounding, a sick, hollow rhythm in my chest. I opened my email, my fingers flying across the keyboard almost of their own accord. I don't even know what I was looking for exactly. A mistake? A cancellation notice I'd missed? I searched Valora's name, and there it was. A chain of emails between her and the charter management company that handled the yacht's scheduling and crew when I wasn't using it. I clicked it open. My eyes scanned dates, times, pleasantries. And then I saw it. A message from Valora sent 2 weeks prior. It was short, polite, and absolutely devastating. It read, "Please confirm Marjorie's name has been removed from the manifest for the July 5th 10th charter. This is a Preston family trip. We require privacy." My breath hitched. I read it again. And a third time. Removed from the manifest. Not "We'd like to add guests." Not "Can we confirm the dates?" It was a direct, calculated, secret instruction to erase me from my own property. The gut punch was so intense I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't an oversight. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, premeditated act of exclusion. This was a coup, a quiet, polite, champagne-fueled coup, and I was the deposed queen, sitting alone in my office, watching them celebrate. On my throne, I must have sat there for an hour, just staring at the screen. The words burned into my vision. The initial shock slowly morphed into a cold, heavy certainty. I was alone in this. I knew, with a horrible clarity, how the conversation with Lyle would go. He came home a few hours later, whistling, dropping his keys into the ceramic bowl by the door. He came into my office smiling, ready to tell me about his day. "Hey, you," he said, leaning in to kiss me. I turned my head slightly, and he kissed my cheek instead, confused. "Everything okay?" he asked, his smile faltering. I didn't say anything. I just turned my laptop screen towards him. He leaned in, his brow furrowed. I watched his face as he read the email from Valora. I saw the flash of recognition, the immediate discomfort. His eyes darted away from the screen. Away from me. He started pacing a little, running a hand through his hair. That was his tell. He was searching for an escape route. Okay, he started, his voice placating. Look, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. There it was, the exact phrase I knew he'd use. A misunderstanding? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She instructed them to remove my name from the manifest of my own boat, Lyle. What part of that is hard to understand? He winced. You know how Valora gets, he said, shrugging, as if that explained everything. She's obsessed with this Preston family stuff. She probably just got carried away. It's not personal. Not personal? Every molecule in my body screamed. It was the most personal thing that had ever happened to me. He saw the look on my face and quickly tried another tactic. Honey, please, don't make a scene. It's just a weekend trip. Let them have their fun. We can take the boat out anytime we want. Is it really worth fighting with my entire family over? This? And that was it. That was the moment my heart didn't just break. It shattered. He wasn't on my team. He wasn't even a neutral referee. He was on their team. His priority wasn't my feelings, or the blatant disrespect, or the betrayal. His priority was avoiding conflict. His priority was keeping the peace with them, at my expense. I had spent years making myself smaller, quieter, more agreeable, all to fit into his world. And in that moment, I realized they hadn't just not made room for me. They had actively pushed me out, and my own husband had held the door open for them. I felt a profound, bottomless loneliness settle over me, the kind that chills you from the inside out. I couldn't talk to Lyle. He had already shown his cards. I couldn't talk to his family, obviously. I was adrift. So I did the only thing I could. I called Callista, my best friend since. We were college roommates with terrible haircuts and even worse taste in music. She's an investigative journalist, sharp and cynical and fiercely loyal. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, Marge, what's up? She could tell something was wrong just from my silence. What did they do now? She asked, her voice instantly hardening. I told her everything. I read Valora's email out loud. I recounted the pathetic, dismissive conversation with Lyle. My voice trembled a bit, not with sadness, but with a rage that was so deep it was almost silent. I didn't have to explain the context or the years of subtle slights that had led to this moment. She already knew. She'd been my witness. When I was done, there was a beat of silence on the other end of the line. Then she said, her voice dripping with ice, Marjorie, listen to me. This is not a misunderstanding. This is not. Valora just being difficult. This is a strategy. This is a deliberate, coordinated campaign to minimize you, to erase you from the narrative of your own life. They are testing you. They are seeing what they can get away with. Her words cut through the fog of my hurt and confusion like a laser. A strategy. A campaign? She was right. This wasn't just about a boat trip. It was about power. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I mean, if they can get away with kicking you off your own yacht, she said, her voice low and serious. What do you think they'll try next? Your company? Your home? Don't you dare let them gaslight you into thinking you're overreacting. You're underreacting. The real question isn't why they did this. The real question is, what else are they doing that you don't know about? And that question hung in the air between us, terrifying and galvanizing all at once. She had just handed me a key, a new way of seeing everything. I wasn't a victim of random family drama. I was the target of a hostile takeover. Callista's words echoed in my head long after we hung up. What else are they doing? The question unlocked a memory, something I hadn't thought about in years. It came to me not as a thought, but as a feeling, the smell of salt and diesel, the gentle rocking of a small boat, the warmth of the sun on my face. I was a teenager again, out on the water with my dad on his boat, the Sea Sprinter. It was a small, beat-up fishing boat, old and worn, but it was his pride and joy. It was our only luxury. We couldn't afford fancy vacations. Our escape was that boat, a few miles off the coast, with a couple of fishing lines in the water. I remember one afternoon, I was watching him polish the small brass compass mounted near the wheel. His hands were calloused and rough from his work as a mechanic, but he polished that compass with such tenderness, as if it were a priceless jewel. He caught me watching him and smiled. "This old girl isn't much to look at," he said, patting. "The worn fiberglass dashboard, but she's ours. Bought and paid for with sweat. Nobody can ever take that away." He looked out at the horizon, his eyes squinting in the sun. "One day," he said, his voice full of a gentle, hopeful pride, "you'll have a boat so grand it'll make this old girl look like a bathtub. You're smart, you're a worker. You'll have it all. But you'll have earned it yourself. That's the only way it counts, kiddo. Remember that." He passed away a few years before I met Lyle. He never got to see my success. He never got to see the Wanderer. I bought that yacht not as a status symbol, not to impress the Prestons, but as a tribute to him. It was the physical manifestation of his belief in me. It was the grand boat he dreamed of for me, earned with my own sweat, just like he'd said. And Ballora wasn't just trying to steal a vacation from me. She was trying to desecrate that memory. She was trying to steal my father's pride, my hard work, my identity. And in that moment, the hurt and the sadness burned away, and what was left was a pure, cold, clarifying anger. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about him, and about me. And I would not let them win. The shift inside me was palpable. It felt like a circuit breaker flipping on, flooding a dark house with light. The grief turned to resolve. The confusion turned to focus. I sat back down at my desk, the same desk where I strategized multi-million-dollar deals. And for the first time, I looked at my personal life through the same lens. I was no longer a hurt wife or an excluded daughter-in-law. I was a CEO whose primary asset was under threat. And what do you do when an asset is under threat? You protect it. You gather intelligence. You build a case. I moved my mouse, and with a series of deliberate clicks, I created a new folder on my pristine desktop. I typed in the name, my fingers steady. The Wanderer. It looked small and insignificant, just a little yellow icon on a vast digital space. But it felt monumental. It was my war room. The first thing I did was save the email chain. The entire thing. I saved it as a PDF, preserving the headers, the timestamps, everything. Evidence file number 1. Then, I navigated through my digital files to the documents folder for the yacht. I found the original bill of sale from 2 years ago. My eyes scanned the legal language until they landed on the purchaser information. Purchaser, Marjorie L. Evans, my maiden name. I had bought it before Lyle, and I were even married. The funds had come directly from my business account, a wire transfer for the full amount. Lyle's name was nowhere on it. The Prestons had contributed nothing, not a single penny. I saved a copy of that bill of sale into the Wanderer folder. Now it contained 2 files. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It was proof. It was the beginning of my own strategy, my own campaign. They thought they were playing a social game of whispers and exclusion. They had no idea I was about to change the rules and turn it into a game of facts and evidence. And in that game, I knew I could destroy them. Callista's question, "What else are they doing?" became my mantra. For the next few days, I was a woman possessed. During the day, I was the capable CEO of my company, leading meetings and making decisions. But at night, after Lyle was asleep, I would slip into my office and become an investigator in my own life. It started with a hunch. The yacht was managed by a third-party company, but they had an online portal where I, as the owner, could view maintenance logs, charter schedules, and expense reports. I had logged in a few times when I first bought it, but hadn't had a reason since. I found my login details and accessed the portal. Everything looked normal at first glance. Maintenance records, fueling costs, the upcoming Preston family charter neatly listed. I clicked around, exploring every tab, every link, and then I found it. Tucked away in a section labeled Vessel Documentation, there was a file I had never seen before. It was titled Amended Ownership Agreement Draft.pdf. My blood ran cold. I clicked on it. The document that opened was a piece of formal, terrifying legal fiction. It was designed to look like a standard update to the vessel's papers. But the content was breathtaking in its audacity. It listed both me and Lyle as 50-50 as co-owners. That was bad enough. But the truly venomous part was a small, dense paragraph titled Right of Survivorship. I had to read it 3 times to fully grasp its meaning. It stipulated that in the event of the death of one co-owner, their 50% share would automatically, and without question, pass to the surviving co-owner. Not to my estate, not to my chosen heirs, to Lyle, and by extension, to his family. They were trying to legally steal half my yacht while I was alive, and ensure they got the other half when I was dead. At the bottom of the document, in small print, were the words, drafted by the offices of Alistair Finch. Alistair Finch, Valora's personal attorney. The snake who handled all the Preston family's dirty work. This wasn't some hypothetical estate planning. This was a calculated, legal maneuver to seize my most significant personal asset, drafted by my sister-in-law's lawyer. This had moved far beyond a stolen vacation. This was grand larceny, wrapped up in a bow of legalese dot. I felt a strange, icy calm settle over me. The kind of calm that comes when your worst fears are confirmed. It's a horrible kind of relief. At least now I knew the full scope of the battlefield. The next morning, I decided to give Lyle one last chance. Not because I thought he would pass the test, but because I needed to see him fail for my own clarity. I needed to burn away any last lingering trace of hope I had for the man I had married. I found him in the kitchen, making coffee. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I walked over, tablet in hand, and placed it on the counter in front of him, the draft of the ownership agreement displayed on the screen. "Did you know about this?" I asked, my voice as cold and clinical as a surgeon's scalpel. He looked at it, and for a moment, I saw genuine shock on his face. He paled. "What is this?" "No, of course not. I've never seen this before." And I believed him. I don't think he was actively plotting with Valora. He was too cowardly for that. He was a collaborator, not a conspirator. But then, the predictable pivot happened. His shock melted away, replaced by that familiar, weak defensiveness of his family. "Marge, are you sure you're reading this right?" he asked, as if I were illiterate. Maybe, ... Maybe Valora thought this was for estate planning, to protect the asset. To protect you if something happened. The sheer absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Protect me? By drafting a secret document with her lawyer that stripped me of 50% ownership and redirected my half to them upon my death. Protect me, Lyle, or protect the Preston legacy? I asked, quoting Valor's toast back to him. He had no answer. He just stood there, looking helpless, trapped between his wife and his sister. And in his silence, he made his choice. He chose her. He chose them. I didn't say another word. I just picked up my tablet and walked away. My heart didn't even break this time. It was already in pieces. I just felt a quiet, resolute click as the final lock on my heart turned, sealing him out for good. The marriage was over. You just didn't know it yet. With Lyle's failure, Valora seemed to feel emboldened. It was like she sensed she had won him over to her side, and now she could escalate her campaign against me without fear of reprisal. The attacks became more public, more targeted, designed, not just to exclude me, but to dismantle my life outside the family. It started with my charity work. I was the chair for an annual fundraising gala for a children's literacy foundation, an event I poured my heart and soul into every year. A week before the gala, I got a call from one of our biggest corporate sponsors, a man I considered a friend. He was deeply apologetic, but he was pulling his company's six-figure donation. "I'm so sorry, Marjorie," he said, his voice full of genuine regret. "There are just some unfortunate rumors circulating about your financial stability. Whispers that things aren't as they seem. We can't afford to be associated with any uncertainty right now." Unfortunate rumors. I knew exactly where they came from. It was Valera's signature move, a well-placed whisper in the right ear at the right country club luncheon. Then, my social life started to dry up. Lunch plans with mutual friends would be canceled at the last minute with flimsy excuses. "So sorry, something came up." Read one text from a woman I'd known for years. A few days later, I saw a picture of her on social media, having lunch with Valora at the exact time and place we were supposed to have met. Valora was a master of social warfare. She didn't use bombs. She used poison, a slow-acting toxin of rumor and innuendo that isolated you, made people doubt you, and ultimately starved you of your support system. She was trying to turn me into an island, convinced that if she cut me off from everyone else, I would be too weak to fight back. She was trying to destroy my reputation, my community, my entire world. And with every canceled lunch, every withdrawn donation, every pitying look from someone who had heard the whispers, my resolve hardened. She wasn't just taking on Marjorie Preston, the quiet wife. She was taking on Marjorie Evans, the woman who had built an empire from nothing. And that was a war she was never going to win. Just when I was starting to feel completely surrounded, a lifeline appeared from the most unexpected place. I was working late one night when my phone buzzed. A blocked number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Is this Marjorie Preston?" A young woman's voice asked. She sounded nervous. "Yes. Who is this?" "You don't know me," she said, her words rushing out in a torrent. "My name is Chloe. I used to work for Valora. I was her personal assistant. I quit a few months ago. I couldn't take it anymore. The environment was toxic." I sat up straighter in my chair, my heart starting to beat a little faster. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Chloe, why are you calling me?" "I'm still friends with some people who work for the family," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I heard what she's doing. About the yacht, about the rumors she's spreading. I saw her do it to other people. She's a monster." I listened, silent, letting her talk. "When I was leaving," she continued, "I copied some files from her computer. I know I shouldn't have, but it was for my own protection. I was so afraid she'd try to ruin my reputation after I quit. And I have copies of her correspondence with Alistair Finch, the lawyer." My breath caught in my throat. "What did they say?" I asked. "It's all there, Mrs. Preston. She instructed him to draft the ownership agreement for the yacht. She told him that you were unwell, that you were mentally unstable and making erratic financial decisions, and that the family needed to step in to protect the assets from you. She was building a fake case against you to justify seizing your property. It was the missing piece, the motive, the malice aforethought. It wasn't just a financial grab. It was a character assassination designed to make the theft look like a rescue. Can you send them to me?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "They're on their way to your inbox right now," Chloe said. "Good luck, Mrs. Preston. Take her down." I hung up the phone and immediately opened my email. There it was. An email from a secure, anonymous address. Attached were several PDF files. I opened the first one. It was an email from Valora to her lawyer, and the words were right there, in black and white. "Alistair, we need to move forward with protecting the family assets. Marjorie's behavior has become increasingly erratic. We fear for her stability." It was a lie. A vicious, calculated lie. And I had the proof. The plan came to me then, fully formed, as if it had been waiting in the wings for this final piece of evidence. It was daring, it was theatrical, and it was perfect. My office was no longer just an office. It was a command center. The Wanderer folder on my desktop was no longer just a collection of files. It was an arsenal. I had the initial email proving my exclusion. I had the bill of sale proving my sole ownership. I had the fraudulent ownership agreement proving their intent to steal. And now, thanks to a brave former assistant, I had Valora's own words proving malice and a conspiracy to paint me as mentally unstable. The trap was complete. All I had to do was spring it. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Captain Miller's phone. A gruff, familiar voice answered. Captain Miller was the captain of the Wanderer. He was a man in his 60s, with a face weathered by the sun and sea, and an unwavering sense of integrity. I had hired him myself, choosing him over the polished yacht school captains Valora had recommended. I trusted him implicitly. "Captain," I said, my voice steady and clear, all traces of the victim gone. "It's Marjorie Preston. Mrs. Preston." What a surprise. "I trust you're well?" "I am very well, Captain." "I have a change of plans. I will be joining the charter tomorrow afternoon." There was a pause on the line. I could picture him processing this, knowing the current manifest listed only the Preston family. "Understood, Mrs. Preston," he said, without a hint of question in his voice. "I'll have your suite prepared." "Thank you, Captain," I said. "One more thing, and this is very important. You are to inform no one of my arrival. Not the charter company, not the crew, and especially not my guests." "Am I clear?" "Crystal clear, Mrs. Preston," he replied, and I could hear the faint trace of a smile in his voice. He knew a storm was coming. "I look forward to welcoming you aboard." I hung up the phone and leaned back in my chair, a slow, grim smile spreading across my face. The pieces were in motion. Valor wanted to toast to the Preston family legacy on my yacht. Fine. I was about to give her a night she would never, ever forget. The next day the sun was bright, the water a brilliant turquoise. It was a perfect day for a reckoning. I took a water taxi from a small private marina an hour down the coast from where the Wanderer was anchored. As we sped across the water, the wind whipping through my hair, I felt a strange sense of peace. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. From a distance, the yacht looked like a postcard. Gleaming white, majestic, a symbol of serene luxury. I could see them, tiny figures on the upper deck, lounging in the sun. The Prestons, in their natural habitat. As my little speedboat pulled up alongside the massive hull, a crew member dropped a ladder. I stepped onto the platform, and Captain Miller was there to greet me. He gave a short, sharp nod, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Preston," he said, his voice a low rumble. I followed him up the stairs to the main deck. The moment my foot hit the polished teak, a hush fell over the lounging family. Drinks stopped midway to lips. Conversations died. They all just froze, staring at me as if they'd seen a ghost. Lyle's face went white. Valora, who had been holding court in a large wicker chair, slowly stood up. Her face was a perfect mask of polite surprise, but I could see the fury flickering in her eyes like heat lightning. She had lost control. Her perfect, exclusive family party had just been crashed by the one person she had so carefully excluded. Before she could say a word, Captain Miller stepped forward. He cleared his throat, and in a voice that carried across the entire deck, loud and formal and utterly unambiguous, he announced, "Attention everyone. Please welcome Mrs. Preston. The owner is now on board." He said the word owner with a distinct emphasis, and he looked pointedly, deliberately, right at me. It was a public declaration of loyalty. It was the first shot fired. In that single moment, the power dynamic on that yacht shifted, completely and irrevocably. Valora's face tightened, the polite mask cracking just a little. The air crackled with tension. The party was officially over. The rest of the afternoon was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive tension. The family members avoided my gaze, murmuring amongst themselves in hushed tones. Valora retreated to her suite to rest, which I knew meant she was furiously texting her lawyer and trying to figure out her next move. Lyle tried to approach me once, his face a miserable mess of confusion and guilt. "Marjorie, what are you doing here?" he whispered. "I own the boat, Lyle," I replied coolly, not even bothering to look at him. "The real question is, what are you doing here?" He flinched as if I'd slapped him and scurried away. The main event was scheduled for that evening. Dinner. A formal affair in the Yacht's opulent dining salon. The table was set with crystal and silver, the very picture of refined elegance. But the mood was as thick and suffocating as a wool blanket on a summer day. Valora, having recovered her composure, re-emerged in a stunning evening gown, ready to reclaim her authority. After the main course was served, she stood, tapping her glass for attention, just as she had in the video. "I just want to say," she began, her voice radiating false warmth, "how wonderful it is to have the family all together. In these trying times, our heritage, our legacy, is the one thing we can always count on. It's so important to protect the Preston legacy, to nurture it, and to ensure it remains strong for generations to come." She raised her glass to the Prestons. A few people echoed the toast, their enthusiasm noticeably muted. They applauded politely. Then, after a moment of silence, I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. I was holding a sleek, dark blue leather folder. "Thank you, Valora," I said, my voice calm and clear, easily cutting through the tension. "That was a beautiful speech. And your talk of legacy, of protecting things, has inspired me to share a few things as well, a sort of addendum to the family records." I opened the folder. A wave of unease rippled around the table. Valora watched me, her smile frozen on her face, but her eyes were like chips of ice. "First," I said, pulling out the first document, "let's talk about this trip. Valora, you spoke of family being together, which is why I was so confused to find this." I held up the printout of her email. I read it aloud. "Please confirm Marjorie's name has been removed from the manifest. This is a Preston family trip. So I suppose the first question is, am I not family? Or was this just a simple mistake?" Silence. Valora's face was turning pale under her perfect makeup. I didn't wait for an answer. "But that's a small matter, really," I continued, placing the email on the table. "More of a social curiosity. What's more concerning is the issue of ownership. I know there's been some confusion about who this vessel belongs to. So, for clarity, I pulled out the second document. This is the original bill of sale for the Wanderer, purchased 2 years ago by Marjorie L. Evans. That's me, paid in full from my personal accounts. The Preston name, the Preston legacy, and the Preston bank accounts appear nowhere on this document." I let that sink in, my eyes sweeping across the stunned faces. I then turned my gaze directly to Valora, which brings me to my favorite document. I pulled out the amended ownership agreement. This is a draft of a new ownership agreement, drawn up by your personal lawyer, Alistair Finch. It attempts to grant 50% ownership to my husband, Lyle, and contains a fascinating survivorship clause that would grant him the other 50% upon my death. A brilliant, if fraudulent, legal maneuver. An attempt at grand larceny, one might say. The color drained completely from Valora's face. Lyle looked like he was going to be sick. "Of course," I said, my voice dropping slightly, "one would need a reason to take such a drastic, illegal step. One couldn't just steal an asset. One would have to create a narrative, a justification." And then I played my trump card. I pulled out the final document, the email from Chloe. "This is an email from you, Valora, to your lawyer. In it, you instruct him to proceed because, and I quote, Marjorie's behavior has become increasingly erratic. We fear for her stability. You were trying to have me declared unstable to justify stealing my property. I placed the final paper on the stack. I looked around the table at the horrified family. So, let's talk about legacy, Valora. Is this the Preston legacy? Lies? Forgery? A conspiracy to defraud a member of your own family under the guise of concern? Because from where I'm standing, it looks less like a legacy and more like a crime syndicate. I stood there in the dead silence, the folder in my hand. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't cried. I had simply presented the facts. And the truth, laid bare on that dining table, was more devastating than any emotional outburst could ever have been. Valora just stared at me, her mouth slightly open, completely and utterly defeated. The queen had been deposed. The dinner party didn't end. It dissolved. People mumbled excuses and fled, scurrying away from the wreckage as if the dining salon were radioactive. No one looked at Valora. Her power, which was built entirely on reputation and social control, had been publicly dismantled. She was left alone at the head of the long table, a solitary figure amidst the crystal and silver, looking small and pathetic. As I was leaving the room, one of Lyle's cousins, a woman who had always been quietly pleasant to me, caught my arm. Her eyes were wide. "I'm so sorry, Marjorie," she whispered, her voice shaking. We knew she was being awful. We knew it wasn't right. We were just too cowardly to say anything. I'm so sorry." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a crack in the facade, a tiny acknowledgement of the truth. It was more than I'd ever gotten from any of them. I spent the next few hours on the upper deck, just breathing in the cool night air, the open sea stretching out before me, dark and quiet. That night, Lyle found me. He looked broken. Not angry, not defensive, just utterly shattered. All the weakness and charm had been stripped away, and what was left was a hollowed-out man. He didn't make excuses. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just stood there for a long moment, and then he wordlessly handed me a folded document and a pen. I opened it. It was a legally prepared affidavit, already signed and dated by a notary he must have called from shore. In it, he formally and irrevocably signed away any and all current or future claim, perceived or real, to the yacht, and any other major asset that was in my name. "It's just a start, I know," he said, his voice hoarse. "It's nothing, but I'll sign whatever else you want. I'll do whatever it takes. I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn back a fraction of your trust." I looked at the document, then at his face. For the first time, I saw not a Preston, but just a man. A weak man who had made a terrible choice and was finally, truly facing the consequences. I didn't know if our marriage could be saved. I didn't even know if I wanted it to be. But his action, this piece of paper, was the first real apology he had ever given me. It was the first time he had chosen me over them. A few weeks later, back home, the dust had started to settle. Lyle had moved into the guest room. The silence in the house was heavy, but it was a clean silence, not the tense, unspoken silence of before. One rainy Sunday afternoon, I found myself in the attic, looking for an old photo album. I stumbled upon a dusty cardboard box filled with my father's things, old tools, fishing lures, and his worn leather logbook from the Sea Sprinter. I sat down on the floor and opened it, flipping through the pages of handwritten notes about weather conditions, fishing spots, and engine maintenance. Tucked into the back pocket of the logbook was a folded yellow piece of paper. It was a note, written in familiar, slightly slanted handwriting. I had never seen it before. I unfolded it carefully. It wasn't long. It just said, "My legacy isn't a name or money in the bank. It's not a boat or a house. It's you. The way you think, the way you work, the goodness in your heart. You are my legacy." I read the words, and something inside me that had been clenched tight for years finally released. The tears that came weren't tears of sadness or anger. They were cleansing tears. Tears of grief for my dad, but also tears of joy and understanding. All this time, I had been fighting over a symbol, the yacht, and the Prestons had been fighting for their symbol, a name, a hollowed-out idea of heritage. But my father, the humble mechanic with the calloused hands, he had known the truth all along. My legacy wasn't something I owned. It was something I was. My strength, my resilience, my refusal to be erased, that was his legacy. That was my inheritance. And no one could ever take that away from me. The final scene of this story doesn't take place in a tense dining room or a lonely office. It takes place on the deck of the Wanderer, a month later, on a perfect sunny afternoon. The water is sparkling, the sky is a brilliant blue, but the guest list is completely different. There are no Prestons here. Instead, the yacht is filled with laughter and easy conversation. My true family is here. Callista is here, a glass of champagne in her hand, a triumphant smirk on her face. My core team from work is here, the people who believed in me from the very beginning. The donors who called me back after the truth came out, mortified, and doubled their donations are here. And Chloe, Valora's brave former assistant, is here, looking relaxed and happy. Her new job at my company already a perfect fit. I stood up and raised my glass. Everyone quieted down, smiling at me. I'm not going to make a long speech, I said. I just want to thank all of you for being here, for being my foundation when the ground was shaking. I looked around at their faces, at the genuine warmth and support in their eyes. They say the best revenge is living well. But I think it's more than that. I think the ultimate victory is realizing you don't need to sit at their table anymore. You can build your own. I raised my glass higher. So, a toast to building your own table and to choosing your own legacy. Everyone cheered, a real cheer, full of life and joy. I looked out at the endless expanse of open water, the horizon clear and wide open. I was finally at peace, finally free. I hadn't just won back my property. I had won back my life. And I was just getting started.